Welcome back. This is a story of redemption. This is my cousin Steven's Martin X series, and it was smashed, not by him, and so I'm going to repair it. And so here you will see me repairing the back, and my glue of choice is CA glue or super glue. And you might be asking yourself, why would you use super glue? And the answer is that's not exactly wood. It's high pressure lam, HPL, as you can read. So it's like a synthetic composite material that Martin uses on its X series instruments. I'm always surprised with these guitars that even though they're not exactly wood, they still sound like a Martin. So the engineering that goes into this is amazing. And the outside of the material is really like space age stuff. It's pretty much scratch resistant. I'll show you that later. So here you will see me filling in the voids, and I use thick first, and then I sand it flat, and then I'll go in there with thin like you just saw. And so I'm just trying to cover my bases. And there was a crack right along the edge of one of those braces, and I'm actually going to move that brace down a little bit. I'll show you why later. That's a really big crack right there. So yeah, I'm using my file on the back, and it's really not even making a dent in that material. I'm using a razor right there. I'm coming back, more filing. Eventually, I file so much I get my file clogged, but I'm really going to town, and you can kind of see that figured layer wear to the next layer a little bit, but it's like not scratching, like I say. Interesting stuff. So that gave me the green light just to go to town using a razor file. And yeah, this is a really tactile thing, trying to feel it, make sure the crack is sealed. And so I'm going to use carbon fiber here to reinforce the cracks. That's my ace in the hole. It's not an odd thing to sieve fabric on the inside of a guitar. Martin does it on the top, and other makers do too. Not really for support, but I don't actually know why they do it. Maybe it's something in manufacturing, because they're just using like some type of cloth, not carbon fiber. But I lay down some thick, and then I lay down the strip, and the glue seeps through the weaves, and then I will put more thick on top of it. I'm putting tape on the back to fill that void, and I'm going to lay down a strip. I squirt it with accelerator, and then I come back and put more on. And when you're doing this, notice how the paper towel is smoking. Super glue and paper towel or tissue paper does not get along. Make sure you wear some eye protection and some nose protection. Really, just cover your face, because this is nasty stuff, not to mention when I start to sand the carbon fiber. And, you see that? It could even start a fire. So you just have to really be careful and pay attention to what you're doing. That's a back from a different guitar. But I'm measuring the braces, and I ultimately used the book by Irving Sloan, Acoustic Guitar Making. I think it's called Steel Guitar Making, something like that. It's a legendary book. And there you'll see me use a template for the braces, and I'm making the curve. And there are a couple different curves, I believe, and I use a couple different versions of those templates. And so I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the back of an acoustic guitar is arched a little bit. So today they have like sanding dishes and curved cauls and stuff where you can really maintain that arch or create it if you're building a guitar from scratch. Here you will see me do something kind of non-traditional or not right, depending on how you look at it. But instead of using segmented blocks, or segmented cauls, so for every clamp I use to glue the brace, I should have a different caul. I just used one long caul. And this caused the back to be slightly flatter than I would have liked it to be. But That was just something I did because I wasn't really thinking that it would flatten as much as it did, and also it was just convenient to use one strip. It's crazy to think, because the bottom of those braces are curved and the back is so flexible, that using a long flat caul like the one you see there would cause it to distort in any kind of way. You would think instead of flatten that it would just bounce right back to its shape regardless, but you really do, that long piece should be broken up. Every clamp should have its own caul, and in a perfect world you would be using a Go bar deck with a radius dish and all that stuff. But I'm kind of going old school here, going experimental, like using super glue for almost the entirety of this repair. So I learned a lot in doing this. And spoiler, but it turned out good and it sounded good, so it worked. Some of these braces I glued and I waited for it to dry like an hour, and others I left overnight. This is where the fun begins. I love shaping braces, especially this mahogany was really fun to use with my block plane, and it creates those really cool curls. And if I had all the time in the world, I'd be tapping it and holding it up to my ear and really shaping the tone with the amount I'm taking from the braces. And so it may look like I'm just planing the top, but I also shape them to have a peak like they should. So they're not just flat, even though that's how it may appear here. And that workboard took me a long time to make, but its purpose was twofold. So some of those spool clamps are not spool clamps. It's hard to see from this angle of just looking down, but some of them have a block on it and it's pushing the body into shape. So here I just dry clamped, and now I'm going to put some glue on there. I'm gluing that badge to the block that covers the bolt for the neck, because that's a bolt-on neck. And if you have to adjust that and it was loose, you got to take that piece off. So I wrote in there, "Love you, Steve." And you can only see that with a mirror. And when you look in there with a mirror, it's going to be upside down. Or it's going to be reversed. I could have wrote it reversed. So I got some glue on there. I buttered up the sides, as they say. See that spool clamp I'm touching? That's not a spool clamp. It's forcing the body into its shape. That's what the dry clamp was about. I'm going to continue to force it into shape with a series of other clamps. This is really stressful part right here. You got to make sure that everything's right. And I used Type Bond, as you can see. Why didn't I use super glue? I consulted some of the other luthiers at my shop, and they said, because the inside is kind of fibrous, it's high pressure lam, so it's a bunch of pieces laminated. The outside is different from the inside, and ultimately, because of the open time and other factors, I decided to use wood glue. It turned out good. Yep, getting really creative here with the clamping. But I was proud of that workboard. You could see there the spools and then the ones pressing against the side, the difference. People do this all kinds of different ways. I like the clamps. So, there's the man. I asked him to take off the bridge because of the time crunch, and he did it with a blunt chisel. He's been doing that for years. And now you can see why we might use super glue to glue it back on, because you'll see when I take my chisel and start to scrape it off. It's just weird material. Martin used to use, it looks black, some of their bridges, and it's like a bowling ball type material. And this one, it's not rosewood, I don't think. It looks a lot lighter than rosewood. I don't know what it is, but it's a type of wood. And so with my scoring, I do a bunch of light passes, and every time you do a light pass, it digs into the pass you did last more and more and more, if that makes sense. Versus trying to go hard the first pass and your blade could wander, especially that one's a scalpel, thin blade. You definitely don't want the score mark to be outside the footprint of the bridge. That's the goal. So my scalpel's at a little bit of an angle anyways. See, you could just chisel that wood right away. I don't know what glue they use in the factory. Might be that weird stuff. The 2-part epoxy or whatever. But I'm going to continue with the theme of this video and use good old-fashioned super glue. But yeah, I'm just taking that wood off and it's just coming right off. At this point, I'm really excited. The box is together. The thing I've been working on for a year, it's finally, coming back to life. And during the course of this project, the shop rejected about 3 of these guitars that had not as bad, but a similar type. They were cracked or broken, and we just don't work on them. We'll re-glue a bridge. So back in the day, our shop was a Martin authorized repair shop, and Martin used to tell us to glue the bridges back on to these with like a 2-part glue mix. And not only was it messy and hard to work with, but it was weird glue. It was a little tacky and just funky. And so eventually Martin just said, use thick super glue. So I say I'm being experimental, but really I think that was probably the best thing to use. Someone could argue epoxy. Sometimes epoxy gets rubbery and has some flex or becomes too brittle. I know super glue can become brittle, but I did use the carbon fiber, and time was the name of the game. So I wanted something I could set off with the accelerator. So, so far the guitar has lasted 6 months, and I see my aunt all the time. I see the guitar all the time. It's fine. It hasn't moved at all, So there you'll see how Martin told us to glue that bridge on. And obviously I don't want a lot of squeeze out. I'm anti-squeeze out. And so a little bit's fine, but I'm prepared. You'll see my blue shop towels. I was really surprised with how well this went. There was a little squeeze out, but not much, and I wiped it away no problem. I was thinking I might have to use acetone or something like that, and if I did use it, I was afraid what it would do to the HPL, so maybe I would test it a little bit on the back, but who has time to do that when there's super glue drying on the top? And all this stuff is going through your mind, but look, it just the squeeze out just wiped away easy. And I just pressed it there with my hand a little bit until I felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And then you start the clamping process, and you want to give even pressure. And I did notice that the fingerboard was loose, so I went ahead and glued it, and what you see there is accelerator and the pipette, giving the whole thing a polish. Right now I'm really excited. All my hard work is paying off, everything is glued back up and it's time for the setup. Here's how it sounds. Just a quick test in our noisy shop.
Steven's playing for me.
So I'm trying to play this F.
Beautiful.
I was only supposed to be on 2 notes on that one. But,
God, that's beautiful. That's gonna be so pretty.
All right. Thank you all for watching the repair. I love you, Steve. To all my friends and family, love you too. I know everyone's glad to see this guitar back and rocking, and stay tuned for the next one. And I started a podcast. If y'all want to check out my podcast, it's called All Guitars Buzz. I just talk about my day, at work, what's on my bench, interesting things I'm doing in my shop, some marketplace fun, trying to buy, sell, and trade. And until next time, see y'all later. See ya.